All right. Hello, everyone. So this particular video is going to review the introduction. All right. So what you're going to do, as what you did for me in assignment two, you're going to identify what your object of study is, right? But then I also want you to pay attention to the parenthetical comment where I wrote, "You are no longer working on the research proposal. You are working on the final product. Think about how you are going to construct your study." And the reason why I wrote the parenthetical comment is to remind you as you begin to write assignment four, where you wrote the for this research proposal is like you're no longer going to use the word proposal. Now you're actually working on the actual study itself. So you definitely want to remove the term proposal. Okay. Now, once you've done identifying your general category of understanding of your object of study, then you're going to narrow your object of study by describing what your object of study looks like to your reader. And as I mentioned in class before, if you're still uncertain in terms of the type of concrete example that you're going to provide, what I wrote in terms of the parenthetical comment is, if you aren't unsure how to describe your object of study, review newspapers like the New York Times or the LA Times or even the Christian Science Monitor to look for a hook or a concrete example where you as the writer are able to connect your ideas about your particular topic, and in turn this will allow your reader to understand your train of thought and how you're going about thinking about your particular topic, whatever that may be. Okay. And then once you're done with describing what your object of study looks like for you, you're going to explain how you selected your object of study. And this is sort of the same thing that I asked you to do for assignment two, but you just pretty much copy and paste. Unless I made a comment, then you'll just make those adjustments per whatever comments I made from assignment two. And then once you're done with point number three, then you're going to go to point number four, explain why your manuscript is important for your reader to read. And this is going back to actually the significance of assignment two. Okay. And then you're just going to reword that part of the paragraph to fit the context in terms of why your manuscript is important for your reader to read. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. If not, make sure you ask me any questions when we return to class, okay, after break. And then once you're done with point four, then you're going to go to point five, explain what your reader will come to understand by reading your manuscript. And as I mentioned in class, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the outcome of assignment two and note what you wrote for point number two for the outcome. So you want to make sure that you note any comments, like if I said something like, make sure you develop your ideas further, and that, what I mean by that is, make sure that you're describing and explaining exactly what you hope your reader to get from reading your particular study. Okay. Or if I made more specific commentary, then you would just address those specific commentaries to those specific sentences for that particular part of the essay. Okay. Now, once you're done explaining what you want your reader to understand by reading your manuscript, then you're going to go to point number six. And for point number six, as I mentioned in class, is what you're going to do is that you're going to contextualize your research with the existing literature based on your topic. And as I mentioned before, just to make it easier for yourself, just compare your research to the sources that you're using to help to talk about your research in the literature review. Okay. And as I mentioned, you're going to select one of these three points in terms of how you relate your research with the existing sources that you've collected. So, for example, for point A, I wrote your research aligns with the existing literature, and as I mentioned in class, that just means that your research is consistent in terms of finding and developing an understanding of that particular topic. As I show you my example, I'm talking about human trafficking within the context of globalization and how connectivity is an important concept in order to understand human trafficking. Okay. Now, just be advised on this point. Just because I'm using a different topic or subject matter, like globalization, the overall logic in terms of how the essay is written is pretty much consistent. Other than the theme and the focus of the courses, the structure of the essay itself doesn't necessarily change. Okay, so then don't like get stressed or concerned if I'm not relating the topic based on the courses that I'm teaching this semester. Just pay attention and focus on the logic and the principle of how this essay is structured and how you go about carrying out your work for this particular assignment. Okay. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, make sure you ask me questions when we return to class. Okay. Now for letter B, your if your research contradicts the existing literature, as I mentioned in class before, you're sort of telling your reader that based on your understanding of all your sources, that your particular topic is going to contradict what they say. And that is perfectly fine as well. Okay. But just be aware that if you do decide to do the contradict existing literature, that you're able to demonstrate how your study contradicts the bulk of the sources that you've used. Okay. Now, for the final selection for this particular point of the introduction, you could also decide to do that your research offers something different from the existing literature. And what that necessarily means is that um, based on your understanding of your sources and based on how you are developing your research, that you notice that your eight sources is missing some type of understanding, and that you want to offer a different type of understanding or a different type of interpretation based on how you understand that particular topic. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense, but just to make you aware that this last one is actually a little more challenging because you definitely have to have a really strong command of all eight sources that you're using in your research paper. And as I mentioned in class, depending on which of the three that you select, I am going to be looking for that promise, because that's a promise that you're making to your reader, and I'm going to see if you fulfill that promise throughout the body of your essay. Okay. So let me show you my written example. So here's the written example, but as you know, I have my name at the top where I place it in the header, and then you're going to include the course number, the assignment, and then the due date. Just to sort of remind everyone, the way how you access the header is just by double clicking at the top and then adjusting the font to make sure that it's 12 points and Times New Roman. All right. And then just write the information or the demographic information and just click once you're done. Okay. And then that's what it's going to look like. All right. So then here's my heading, Roman numeral 1, introduction. So then now I'm going to read the introductory paragraph for my study. So I wrote, the object of study for this research is globalization and human trafficking. To narrow the focus of to narrow the focus of globalization and human trafficking is how a person becomes ensnared as a human trafficked victim. An important dimension of globalization is the issue of interconnectedness, which is how global processes can connect different parts of the world that were isolated at one point in time. A part of the idea of connectivity is the question of movement and how things and people can cross the world's surface. Historically speaking, when things and people travel, it used to take days, weeks, months, and even a- and in very few instances, years. Travel is what has been able to connect disparate parts of the world. In turn, travel is one way that has allowed human trafficking to touch every corner of the earth. Okay. So just to make a point of clarification, where I use the word disparate, it's not necessarily the word like desperate, like a person is in dire need of something. Desperate just means different and potentially isolating. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And then here I explain how I came about selecting this particular topic. So then I wrote, the researcher became interested in human trafficking while working on the dissertation as a graduate student at UC Santa Barbara. I was a member of the Panorama City Council as a youth coordinator for the council. The council organized a youth summit, and one of the topics brought up was human trafficking. I met the director of Expediente Rojo, or the Red File, Carmen. Carmen explained to the council the seriousness of human trafficking in the Latino immigrant community. Having this crucial conversation has motivated me to conduct this research. The importance of reading this manuscript will aid the audience in understanding the method of how human traffickers identify their victims of human trafficking. Knowing how to identify a human trafficker may aid in rescuing a victim from or preventing a person from being human trafficked. By reading this study, it is expected that the reader will understand not only how to identify a human trafficker, but the study will also demonstrate how globalization has made human trafficking easier to accomplish. And sorry about that. About that typo. And then I wrote, modern forms of travel have made it easier for criminal organizations to move people from one part of the world to another. Human trafficking, sadly, is something that happens far too many times out in the open, but many people may not be aware of what to look for. Okay. And then this is the last sentence. Contextualizing this study to the existing literature on how globalization facilitates human trafficking aligns with the existing literature because the study confirms how the ease of global connectivity has facilitated the spread of human trafficking around the world by means of modern traveling technologies. Okay, so you notice that I just have like maybe two short paragraphs um, containing all the points within the introduction. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And what I'm going to do now is stop the video, and then I'm going to go over the issue section of the outline.